What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video, we're going to be talking about a guy by the name of Martin Shkreli. Not entirely sure if that's exactly how you pronounce this guy's name, but that's the best I could come up with. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Martin Shkreli, this guy refers to himself as an American businessman who just on last Friday was sentenced to 7 years in prison for some sort of a Ponzi scheme that he was involved in. Now, this guy is probably most famous for purchasing the rights to a medication by the name of Daraprim, something like that. And this medication has a few different uses, including being used as a medication for people with HIV. But when old Martin Shkreli purchased this medication, he then jacked the price up on it from something like $13.50 a pill to like $750 for one single pill. And you know, I just gotta say this first and foremost, that there is greed at its absolute worst. To think that you bought the rights to a medication that probably helps so many people, and a lot of those people who probably have a tough enough time obtaining that at the $13.50 a pill price that it was originally at. And then you go ahead and jack the price up by something like 5,000%. That is some pretty messed up stuff to do. And it's because of what he did with this medication that he was oftentimes referred to as the most hated man in America. Which I'm not really sure if O.J. Simpson might actually be a top contender for this category as well, considering Fox just aired this little tell-all with him last night. Hypothetically speaking, I did it. Hypothetically, we only talking in hypotheticals here, but I'm trying to tell you, I did it. I did it. I did it. Hypothetically. You know, I don't know about all that hypothetical nonsense you talking about right there, OJ, but it damn sure sounds to me like you just confessed. But getting back to this wonderful example of everything to never be in this world, Mr. Martin Shkreli, who back in August of 2017 was found guilty of the fraud charges he was originally charged with, and again on last Friday was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Now, the crazy thing about this is this guy got the same amount of prison time that I got when I went to prison myself. Except in my case, I got 7 years for some non-violent drug offenses, and because I also had a gun as a convicted felon. I most certainly deserved the 7 years that I was sentenced to, and I'm not gonna sit here and cry about the time that I had to serve. But to think that this guy got the same amount of time for fraud charges that undoubtedly involved millions of dollars. I mean, that to me is pretty damn crazy. A Ponzi scheme involving millions of dollars, 7 years in prison, old Joe and a quarter ounce of blow, 7 years as well. Sounds about right. Sounds about right. But you know, this Martin Shkreli, he didn't just receive this 7-year prison term. In fact, he was also ordered to forfeit something like $7.4 million in personal assets, including a rare and possibly one-of-a-kind Wu-Tang album, also another album, The Carter 5 by Lil Wayne, a Picasso painting, and also he was ordered to pay $75,000 in like court fines or some sort of restitution. And it's all of this $7.4 million in personal assets he had to forfeit that really ain't nothing but a drop in the bucket to this guy who still, after all of this, is worth something like $20 million. And you know, there was also a $5 million bail this guy was originally out on after his conviction back in August of 2017 that he would soon thereafter somehow mess up the conditions of that bond and be forced to go back to jail after he said some pretty crazy things on the internet about old Hillary. So I'm pretty sure he lost that $5 million that he put up for that bail as well. Now, you know, from what I've learned about this guy's trial and also overall court experience, this guy's been pretty ballsy and brazen inside of the courtroom, referring to the prosecutors on his case, the people who are there to get this guy convicted and sent to prison. He actually referred to that prosecutor or team of prosecutors as junior varsity. You know, there's a lot of things you don't ever want to do inside of the courtroom, and one of them is to attack or antagonize the people who are sitting across from you at that other table looking to get you convicted and sent up the creek for as long as they possibly can. Hey, y'all prosecutors ain't nothing but some junior varsity. Yeah, you know, it's really not a good idea to be trying to go make mad those people who are trying to get you sent to prison. There were also some reports that during his court proceedings, this guy would be sitting in the courtroom smiling and smirking, which I think they said something along the lines of like the judge actually called this guy out for not taking seriously this case against him. I mean, can you imagine sitting in a courtroom when there's a case proceeding against you, when you have definitely done something wrong and there are people who are trying to put you in prison and probably right where you belong, and the entire time you're just sitting in there like, I'm sorry, I don't know how to smirk. Now, you know, it's crazy because with the way this guy was acting during his trial, his entire demeanor completely flipped during his sentencing that again took place on last Friday. Because during his sentencing, he most certainly wasn't doing any smiling or smirking. And he most certainly wasn't doing no antagonizing to those prosecutors whose job it is now at sentencing to make their sentencing recommendation to the judge. Hey, y'all remember all that talk I was talking about junior varsity? Man, y'all like some super scholars, man. I take back everything about y'all being some junior varsity. Y'all really, really good. And please don't smoke my boots in this courtroom. Please don't smoke my boots in here. No, he most certainly wasn't doing any of that. In fact, what he was doing instead is something that so many people, and I myself have most certainly done this as well, I'm not too proud to admit this, but what he was instead doing was a whole lot of Now, you know, I'm not exactly sure if this guy broke down crying before sentence was imposed or after. I'm pretty sure there's a good chance he was crying throughout all of this. But you know, the story says that this guy actually broke down in tears inside of the courtroom and begged the judge for leniency. And you know, it actually looks like the judge did offer this guy a little bit of leniency, because the story says that she went on to hand this guy a box of tissues. I'm just begging you, you gotta have some leniency for me. Is there any kind of leniency you can have for somebody like me with a name like Martin Shkreli? Please stop crying. I see the tears every single day inside of this courtroom. You're asking me for some leniency? I can't stand to see a grown man cry inside of the courtroom. Here, take this tissue right here. Take this tissue right here, not only for your tears, but because you're also going up creek. You're gonna need this where you're going. Take the tissue! Take the tissue from me! You know, it's pretty funny how some people try to turn on the tears when they get in the courtroom, hoping and thinking that those tears will actually work. And in some cases, they probably really do. And you know, like I first mentioned when we started talking about crying inside of the courtroom, this is something that I've most certainly done before myself. You know, when I was sentenced to the 7 years that I had to serve for the nonviolent drug offenses that I received my 7-year prison sentence for, I cried as well. And I'd be lying if I sat here and told you that a part of the reason why I was crying was hoping that the judge would have some leniency on me. But the bigger reason for why I actually was crying was not because the judge had just sentenced me to 7 years in prison all this time I had to serve. It was because he had only sentenced me to 7 years in prison. Because I, just like this Martin Shkreli dude, was also facing a substantial amount of time in prison. I mean, they could have really smoked my boots as well, but because of the fact that I already had mandatory minimum time, meaning I couldn't receive anything less than 7 years because I was a convicted felon with drugs and a firearm, and because my original sentencing guidelines, if I didn't have that mandatory minimum time that I had to serve, the high end of my sentencing guidelines was only 5 years and 11 months. So I was already going to be doing something like a whole extra year more than what the high end of my original guidelines were to be without that mandatory minimum time. But even with that, it could have been so much worse for me. And the reason I was crying was because I realized I only had 7 years to do. As much time as that really is, it's a lot of time. I knew that I was going to get another chance to finally try to do something with my life. And you know, who knows? Maybe the tears actually did work for this guy as well, because he was facing up to 45 years in prison, and he only got 7. You know, Bernie Madoff had a similar case to what this guy had, though in Bernie's case, he was running a Ponzi scheme for something like upwards of 30 years involving like $16 billion that he took from people. He ended up getting 150 years. You know, his lawyer actually went at the prosecutor saying, hey, look, can we just go for a 7-piece? You're asking me for 7 years for Bernie Madoff? No. 7 years, that's not gonna cut it. Bernie Madoff's lawyer also went at the prosecutor asking for 12 years, saying, hey, look, Bernie Madoff's old. 12 years? Come on, man, it's like a life sentence. It looks like you're back here asking me for 12 years this time. You were originally asking me for 7 years. No way in hell to the 12 years as well. No. 150 years, that's the plea deal. He can take it or he can leave it, but he's gonna be getting 150 years. You know, maybe old Bernie Madoff should have turned on the waterworks himself. Maybe things would have worked out a little bit different for him. I didn't mean to take You got some tissue, Judge? I ain't mean to take $16 billion over 30 years from all these people. Oh, God, don't give me 150 years. I can't even sit in my chair right thinking about those numbers. But it's with all that we've mentioned thus far about Martin Shkreli that you might be wondering, what's time in prison gonna be like for this guy? I mean, this is a guy who's been referred to as the most hated man in America. A guy that jacked up the cost of a much needed medication by like 5,000%. You would probably imagine that when this guy gets to prison, he's gonna be having him some enemies. And you know, you're probably right about that. But you also have to keep in mind what kind of a prison this guy most likely will end up at. You know, there's a good possibility this guy could end up at a prison like where Martha Stewart served her time at. A low-level facility, what they oftentimes refer to as like a country club. And if he does go to a place like that, he's probably not going to have very many problems at all. There's also the possibility this guy could end up at a medium-level federal prison, where if he did go to one of those type of prisons, there's a better chance that he might run into some people who might be trying to bring problems his way. And not really so much because of his charges or because he's considered like the most hated man in America, more so because of the fact they know he's got money. And he also looks like he'd be some pretty easy pickings up inside of a prison somewhere. But this guy has already served something like 6 months in jail, which he describes as a heartbreaking experience. And let me just tell you, if he thinks 6 months in jail is a heartbreaking experience, wait until he's got to serve out the remainder of that 6.5 years. There most certainly could be a whole lot of some breaking taking place during that 6.5 years, and I ain't talking about his heart, neither. But during the 6 months that he's spent locked up thus far, they say that he's been in the jail tutoring other prisoners in math. And he also went as far as to buy diapers for the girlfriend of a prisoner who just had a baby. So to be completely honest with you, I mean, it really does sound like this guy's already been finding his lane and finding his way just being in the jail. And one thing that I can guarantee you is that when he gets to prison, there most certainly could be some prisoners who do try to check this guy, do try to intimidate and scare him into paying them for protection. But I can guarantee you, no matter what, he's going to be doing that anyways, even if that doesn't happen to him, which again, most certainly probably will happen to him. But just with the little good deeds he's been doing in the jail, doing the tutoring, buying diapers for prisoners' girlfriends, it already seems like this guy's got a good idea of what he needs to do in an effort to have the least amount of problems possible when he does get up the road. And again, when he does get to prison, and if he does have problems with other prisoners, it's not going to be because of his charges. In fact, there's going to be prisoners there, I can guarantee you, who actually idolize this guy. Because he was able to make all of this money, he's got all of this money, and they're going to want to learn as much as they can from this guy. Tell me how you did it. How can I go home and how can I do the same exact thing? I want to be just like you, Martin Shkreli. If he does have problems, those problems are going to come from the fact that this guy is loaded. He's got a lot of money, and there's going to be certain prisoners who are going to be trying to figure out how they can get their hands on some of that damn bread. But one thing I can guarantee you as well is he is most certainly going to be paying for some protection. And that protection he's paying for is going to guarantee his damn safety. Because again, just like those problems could arise because of those dollar signs, that protection's going to be right there to save him because of the same exact thing. Everybody's going to be looking for a little piece of the pie. So it's with all of that and in closing that I can pretty much guarantee you the time that Martin Shkreli is going to be serving, whatever he does have to serve of this remainder 6.5 years, it's going to be an absolute cakewalk for this guy. As bad as that is to say or to have to even admit, $20 million most certainly going to buy you a whole lot of friends in prison. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world, never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace!